Hi, I'm Kara, life coach, wife, and mom to 4 incredible and unique children. It wasn't all that long ago that my son received a diagnosis that had my world come crashing down. I lacked the ability to see past the circumstances, which felt impossible, and the dreams I once had for my life and family felt destroyed. Fast forward past many years of surviving and not at all thriving, and you'll see a mom who trusts that she can handle anything that comes her way and has access to the power and confidence that once felt so lacking. I created the Special Needs Mom podcast to create connection and community with moms who find themselves feeling trapped and with no one who really understands. My intention is to spark the flare of possibility in your own life and rekindle your ability to dream. This isn't a podcast about your special needs child. This is a podcast about you. If you are a mom who feels anxious, alone, or stuck, then you are in the right place. Welcome. Hello and welcome to the Special Needs Mom podcast. I'm glad to have an interview style, or perhaps better said, I'm glad to have an interview/conversation style episode today. It's been actually a little bit since I've had my act together enough to be able to organize a guest episode. I'm very thrilled to have Rachel to introduce you. So who is Rachel? She's an author, public speaker, podcaster, and perhaps most importantly, a special needs mom. Rachel's journey includes losing her mother to leukemia, her adult special needs daughter to a rare neurologically degenerative disease, and her father to illness. She's an author to One More Step, Finding Strength When You Feel Like Giving Up, and Desperate Prayers, embracing the power of prayer in life's darkest moments. Now, I don't know about you, but when I hear a title that just feels like, yeah, she gets it, I want to know more. So, thankfully, her publisher sent me the book. I haven't gotten it yet, so I had to do this interview without having it, but I am thrilled to review it and share with y'all. So 2 things for my listeners. So some of you might already be thinking, but like Kara, Bible's not my gig. It's not where I'm coming from. And so like, what do I do with this episode? Don't worry. We've got you covered. I let Rachel know, listen, this is not where everyone's coming from on the podcast. So I want to make our conversation matter to them too. And I think we did a great job. Secondly, Rachel, as you heard just previously, she's a bereaved mom. And so if you find yourself in a tender spot in relationship to the life and potential death of your child, just notice how this episode is for you and consider if it's a right fit or perhaps one to skip. And this episode was super fun to prepare for because I was like, there's so many different threads that all weave together that are all so important. And like I try to do on all the episodes is talk about the real stuff, like the things that we're thinking in our head and maybe or maybe not saying out loud. And I really appreciated Rachel's genuine, authentic sharing, that what you get from a lot of Christian speakers and authors is a very fluffy, happy only perspective. And it's so important. We go into this. It's so important to tell the whole story. And so with that, enjoy this conversation with Rachel. Rachel, I'm excited and a little intimidated to get into our conversation, but thrilled to have you here as a guest. Welcome to the Special Needs Mom podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I am so honored that you would give me the privilege.
Yeah, and I'll explain the intimidation. I think it's because as I was crafting up the trail in which I will guide us through, these are, I don't know if you get any more like deeper or personal or like impacting than the things we're going to be talking about today. I think we should start by giving all of our listeners a picture of where you are at in life now, but also where you have come from.
Yeah.
Why don't you start with now? So what's going on in your life now? Give us a little snapshot, and then we'll look back at all the things that you have experienced.
Sure. Well, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share. Love the podcast. I'm so appreciative of everything that the podcast has to offer for special needs moms. And it just really is dynamic. I currently work from home as an author, freelance writer, a podcaster, content creator, primarily wife and mom. And I currently have 5 children at home. They are 22, 20, 19, 15, and 13. So it's a bustling place, busy place, always has been for as long as I can remember. And that is a current picture of if you walked through our front door today, you would see shoes all over the place and cleaning happening and dishes and laundry and refrigerator overflowing and all those typical things of family life. We are in a little bit of a different season than we've ever been, obviously. As your children grow, then the dynamic changes. And I'm just so thankful to have a 15 and 13-year-old at this point. I love all the things that we're doing together, schooling, activities, sports. It's all keeps us very busy and we love it. So that gives you a little snapshot.
Yeah, thankful because they're still like young and have all those needs that 13 and 15-year-olds do, or thankful that you got past all the harder parts before?
No, thankful that they're still at home and I still have kiddos at home and that we enjoy life to the full, for sure. Mhm.
Totally. I can imagine it's similar to me being able to enjoy my youngest daughter, who's 7, so I have 4 kids, and in a way that I couldn't enjoy my oldest when he was a toddler for a lot of reasons. I mean, when I was dealing with brain cancer, but I should say as I parented my first 2 toddlers. But it's just, I think as you see your children grow, I think it has you appreciate them in different ways that you can't see before.
Sure. Yeah, it's just maturing as a woman and just
Yes.
figuring out life is not always as you thought it would be or as it was and your perspective changes. So I think it's just growing as a person and as a parent.
Yeah, definitely. And where is that front door that we would walk in? Where is your home?
We live in a northwest suburb of Columbus, Ohio. So we are a Midwestern family. I would say you might consider us a metropolitan family. We don't live in an urban area. We live on the very outskirt edge of the city and it's quite suburban.
Awesome. Well, I get to speak to people, I'm sure you do too, from all over the country. And, growing up in California for the most part, they basically taught us that like California was the only place to live and everybody else was suffering. And everyone I talk to like loves where they live for the most part. I'm like, I feel like I was like lied to my whole life about this. You're so snobby here in California. Okay. So let's take a gander back in time.
Hmm.
And, I quote unquote got to know you through reading your bio on your website and all the different things I do to prepare for a show. And I said out loud, I think, holy shit, this lady knows pain. Like
Yeah.
you describe, well, if you would just to describe kind of starting with the breakdown of your marriage and
Yeah.
then, kind of all the things that came kind of one after another. So give us a look into that.
Yeah. I grew up in such a protective environment, and life looked like I would just be in that white picket fence before I knew it. And so when I got married, I married a pastor, and I found out after we had been married for 5 years that for 4 of the 5 years he had been having an affair. So that
Oh,
rocked my world for sure, made me question literally everything in my life.
yeah.
And part of, I think, what was so painful about that was that we had a beautiful little girl together and
Mhm.
she had special needs. She was born emergency C section. Her name is Taylor, and she had the bounciest little pigtails and just full of life. One of those kids where everywhere you go, people are just turned to look at her because she just had so much vigor and verve. She was just very intriguing to most people, happy, joyful, and at the age of 3 is when her birth father and I wound up divorced, and I became a single mom of special needs child. I didn't stay as a single mom for very long. I was very blessed to meet Matt, and God brought him into my life, and I'm so thankful. And so we fast forward now. Of course, it's been 25 years, and we have 5 children together. But back when we first met in our first year of marriage, mind you, first year of marriage, second marriage. So I don't recommend this to anyone, but I lost an uncle. My mom died that year,
Mm-hmm.
and my husband lost a couple of people on his side of the family as well. So immediately within the first year of our marriage, we experienced 4 deaths in our family between the two of us. And the most heartbreaking for me was losing my mom because she had always been my best friend. It took a little while after that before we finally received a diagnosis for my little Taylor. And Taylor, wow, she sat down one day. 3-year-olds, most of the moms listening here, when your motherly intuition is kicking in, telling you there's something different about this situation. There's something we're missing. I can't put my finger on it, but I know that something else is up. And so that was the way with Taylor. I never really could buy the diagnosis of, oh, she's developmentally delayed and we don't know what her diagnosis is. And it could be a long time before we really understand what her limitations will be. And so, she did progress as an infant, as a toddler, she progressed. Her slowest form of skill was communication. But one day I asked her at the age of about 3 and 3 months, maybe 3 and 3 months, I'll say, I asked her to put her socks on. And she had dressed herself many, many times before this. And so, I knew it was a skill that she had and could do. And I said, okay, Taylor, put your socks on. And I walked away and came back and she still had not put her socks on. And I looked at her in the eyes and said, Taylor, put your socks on. And she looked down at the socks and she looked at me. And it's just one of those moments you don't forget as a parent because I realized that she didn't remember how to do it. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't that she didn't want to do it, it was that she didn't know how to do it. And she had known how to do it before. So that was the first time that she had actually lost a skill. And fast forward to a diagnosis that happened about 9 months later, where she was given a diagnosis of mucopolysaccharidosis. It's a rare metabolic disorder. Her particular subtype is 3B, which is also called Sanfilippo syndrome. And it is often called the childhood Alzheimer's because of the neurological degeneration. Every skill is gradually lost. And so she was given a lifespan of 10 to 15 years. We were blessed to have her for 22 and lost her January 2nd, 2019. While I was writing the book that you just mentioned earlier, my
Mm-hmm.
father passed away, and 4 months later, my father in law passed away. So we have definitely experienced a lot of loss in our family, a lot of suffering and disease, and firsthand know what pain looks like. I don't say that without a grain of salt. It's like you wonder if someone else's pain is worse than yours. We all do it, right? Every special needs mom is like, well, my child doesn't have that. They have this, but they don't have that. And we all know we shouldn't compare, but we're human and we do it in our humanness. And so I always think about the pains of others and think their losses are worse than mine, or I can't possibly understand or wrap my head around what they're going through. So I appreciate the respect that you give it, but honestly, none of us know what tomorrow holds. And so living the best that we can for today is just always been my mantra. And as we were caring for Taylor growing up, that's what we did. We made every day the best that it could be.
Well, I appreciate you putting that in there about the pain scale that some of us are tempted to, I think most of us are tempted to jump onto and be like, well, I got it better or worse than that
Mm,
situation. And to recognize that everybody's pain, no
Yes.
matter if a child's going in for an ear tube surgery or if they're diagnosed with Sanfilippo syndrome, that one pain is not better or more valuable or more important than the other. I think
Yes.
what is meaningful to me about your story and why I think it fits on this show and in this conversation is I think that, well, one, we connect to each other's stories. So
Hmm.
I think many moms, as we continue this conversation, are going to connect to the experiences and the feelings that you have had along the way. And I think it helps give insight to our own experiences and help us understand ourselves better. I also think that, we have so much to learn from one another. The only way to bear all this pain is doing it together. And so when we have somebody like you that we're getting to know, that we know part of your story is, the infidelity of your husband, the diagnosis, the life and the death of your daughter, your mom passing from leukemia, all of it tells us that you're not bullshitting us. Like, I think at that level, you're not able to just paint a pretty picture on it and to
Right.
say, God is good all the time, like a lot
Mm.
of Christians do. And so that's why for me, having the conversation that is real and allows question, allows
Right.
struggle, allows pain to be unresolved and to just exist, that's important to me.
Right.
Now, your book name, I would have mentioned it in the introduction, but I'm like, it's a good book name. Your most recent book,
Desperate prayers. Hmm.
Desperate Prayers. Thank you. Give us a picture when you think of desperation, or maybe better said, you being desperate. Give us a picture of what that is like for you, or maybe even a snapshot when you can remember being especially desperate.
Sure. So many times. But I think one of the first was when we were given that diagnosis for Taylor, and I read the average lifespan is 10 to 15 years. And I don't think there's one person in their humanity who doesn't go, why? Why
Yeah.
me? Why this? Why? I mean, that's our
Why
first
Taylor?
question when, why couldn't I take that on instead of her?
Yeah.
If we have to have something terrible happen in our family, then I want it to be me and not her. And so I think that for sure that's one of the moments that I was desperate in receiving the diagnosis. I think probably the most desperate time has been in her suffering. And I think anyone listening right now will agree with me that when your child is suffering, you're suffering. And it's not that you don't want to suffer, it's that you don't want them to suffer. And so you
Mhm.
wish you could take that on. Like your parenting heart, the biggest thing you wish you could do would be to take away the pain and the suffering of your child. And so I think for that reason, we automatically think, well, why then do we have to walk through this? And there's a lot of anger, a lot of just overall frustration. And a lot of that might be just, life events. For me,
Yeah.
one of those times was letting go of the fact that Taylor wouldn't graduate from high school. I always had a
Hmm.
dream that she would graduate from high school. And for her best interest, I had to let go of that dream. And so, yeah, I just think there was a process that was happening, but hopefully I've answered your question and giving you some of the more specific times where I just felt desperate. I think that if anyone thinks they've arrived in healing, you're probably wrong because grief and loss and this journey of life is just, it's such an up and down roller coaster. And you can think that you are doing great one day, and the next day there's just a freshness or a rawness or a trigger, and you're reliving some of those emotions. So learning how to cope with them and what to do with them is so important.
Yeah. And to live in a world that values being happy, getting better, what I've heard is described as the ascent, as the healing. as the arrival. The culture values that so much more significantly than what's described as the descent, the going down deeper and being inside of the pain that you have described. And I think all of us have experienced or avoided experiencing, that have available to us as moms of these children. So, yes, thank you for giving that picture of what desperation looks like for you. And I think it's very similar for all of us. The things that we're desperate for as moms is to rescue our kids from this pain and the loss.
Mm.
Okay. So we've taken a look at desperation, right? Your desperate prayers. We looked at the desperate part. Well, now let's turn and look at the prayer part. And I want to kind of split my listeners up into 3 groups. Really, probably more of it's 2 groups, but I'm going to give people an option of the first group. First one being those who would describe themselves as unwavering and unquestioned in their faith and relationship with God. And secondly, those who have lost faith, had once had faith or a relationship with God, and for a lot of reasons don't connect with Him or have that same relationship anymore. And the last group is people that don't have a faith background. They weren't raised with any sort of spirituality. They may or may not have some beliefs, but don't necessarily have what they would describe as a formal relationship with God or any sort of religion.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to look at the latter 2 because God bless you all in the first group. Come help us all. But I want to start with the last group, people that are like, wait, what? Like, okay, get desperate. I'm like with you on that. But like, where do I start with prayer? So what would you say to this group?
Well, I guess I've learned to pray very, very short prayers, and they may sound super basic, but I just figured out that first I needed to know whether or not I believed that God was there and that He was listening to me. And so some people believe in asking God for signs. Some people say, no, don't pray for signs. That's wrong. But there are multiple examples of people in the Bible who asked God for signs and He granted them. So I figure in my own innocent heart, it's like, Lord, I don't know if you're there or not, but I want to know. Would you show me something that helps me understand you're there? And it's interesting because when I would go out in nature and walk down the trail, I would feel like this could not have existed unless someone created it. And so just the beauty of nature would speak to my heart and tell me that there is a God who exists. And I have to choose whether or not I want to believe that He actually exists and that He cares about me. So in praying, I just started with really basic prayers. And in fact, this book is still a very basic prayer kind of book. Each chapter has a 3-word prayer. For example, God help me, God hold me, God heal me. And the reason those are short is because, I'm just going to confess to you, when I lost my daughter, my brain would not function. I felt like I was losing my mind. It was just all over the place. And there were so many times where I could not even get words to form in my brain enough to get them to move out of my lips. So in those times, I know how hard it is when you're stressed, when you're coping with suffering and loss, when you're trying to figure out what to do with yourself and how to function in the world. And remember that there are still other people who love and care about you, and that you have a responsibility and a privilege to live on for them. So in that time, I feel like just getting even 2 or 3 words out is a huge, huge accomplishment. And I would just say, God help me multiple times a day. I would say that. So for the person who is like, I don't have a faith, I don't know what that even means, there are multiple promises in the Bible that say if we will go near to God, He will come near to us. And that if we seek Him, we will find Him. So I guess I'm just asking you to consider that he is with you. And if he is, then he wants to have a conversation with you. And so why not turn to him and see if he continues the conversation and there is more to it than maybe you had initially thought as far as your faith. So for that person who doesn't believe, I guess I would just encourage, take a walk in nature and open yourself up to maybe the fact that God created the universe. And if so, what does he want you to believe about who he is? And just open up those questions in your mind to allow yourself the opportunity to grow in that area, or change or move or evolve, however you want to look at it. But just being willing to consider that he is there and he wants to have a relationship with you. And then for the person who says, I know he's there and I know he exists, but I'm mad at him and I don't want a relationship with him. And I so get you. I really do, because I grappled with that a lot, especially after my divorce. It was just really, I felt so rejected. The rejection was so strong, and I felt like I couldn't trust anyone again. And I just wondered, well, if I can't trust people, then God must not be trustworthy either. And I've often described that kind of frustration with God, where you're not running away from God. You're not necessarily mad at him to the point to where you're just rebelling and doing everything that you can to be away from him, but you're definitely not running towards him. And I kind of call it stiff arming him. Like, you want him close enough to where if something bad happens, he's near, and you know he's near, but you feel like you want to keep him at a distance because your feelings for him are so frustrated and angry and stressed and all those feelings, even just anxious and fearful, and all of those feelings get in the way. So deciding whether or not you want to follow the path of your feelings or you want to follow the path of truth is what you have to choose. And I've had to make so many choices contrary to how I feel. Even just letting go of anger and not focusing on it has been a really big choice that I've had to make, because there were just times when I was mad at God. I mean, I would be lying not to tell you the truth about that. Now, thankfully, he did not allow me to stay there. And so I'm grateful to tell you that I probably wouldn't be alive if I didn't have a relationship with God, where I knew he heard me and we could communicate with each other. So I'm so thankful for every breath that I have for that reason.
Yeah. And thanks for addressing kind of that second group of people that have and had some type of faith, but it has essentially been broken down through their lived experiences and perhaps what was faulty theology in the beginning. And you summarize actually this quote that I pulled from a different book that I'm reading on grief. And the author is describing that it would be easier to say I lost my faith. Like that's an easy way to describe it. But more, the quote is, my trust in this person was broken. And so you basically said the same thing. It's hard to trust somebody that doesn't show up how you wanted them to, or
Yeah,
perhaps you think would be better.
right, right.
And yeah. And so you've talked about forgiveness. You've talked about the choice. I'm curious to hear a little bit about, though, that making peace with, I guess, restoration of the relationship after essentially trust was broken with somebody who is all, my belief and your belief is that God is all knowing and all powerful. So he knows all and he can do all. And then to have prayers, desperate prayers, say, in my case, God, keep my son tumor free. Well, the answer was he wasn't tumor free. And then to grapple with, okay, like I know you're there. Apparently the answer is no, but can I trust that you have the good of my son in your mind? Like, how do you make peace with that? As I even asked that question, I think it's probably making peace with it over and over again, because as you said earlier, like, we'll never understand it. Like that will never be like, oh, well, that makes sense because, X, Y, and Z. No, I don't know that ever makes sense. But how have you evolved to be able to have peace in this relationship?
Sure. So I guess I would answer that by saying that the Lord has shown himself to be very personal to me. And I know that this is, not everyone listening may understand that, but God has answered prayers in the most creative, the most astronomical, the most unbelievable ways that I didn't dream of, that I know that only He could have answered those prayers in those ways. They weren't something that I conjured up or that I thought of. They were answers that He gave. And I think the resolution is what I've come to peace with is that God wants to do so much more than just answer our prayers in the way that we want Him to answer them. He wants to answer them with Himself. He wants to be the answer, meaning He wants us to trust that as our creator, He is the God of the universe. And if you think about it, it's the same age old question that Job, the oldest book in the Bible, addressed. Job had everything taken away from him, absolutely everything. And everything that he owned, and he was sick. He had boils, he's scraping himself, and there's this big dissertation between himself and his friends, and they're going back and forth. And ultimately, he starts having a conversation with God, just like we're talking about right now. And his conversation with God was, okay, I don't trust you anymore. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
frustrated with you, and I'm mad at you. And God says, where were you when the universe was created? And so when I remember, it's a good thing I'm not in control of the universe because I have enough trouble with my own little corner of it, right? And so I just believe that thankfully God is in control. I
Mm-hmm.
believe that. And that's what brings the peace, actually deciding to trust Him and to choose that He wants everything to be for my good and for His glory, and that we can't understand that this life on this side of the planet is temporary. We only get so much time, all of us on this planet, and then we'll have the afterlife. And so what do we choose to believe about eternity? Do we think that this is all there is to it? Because if you believe that this life is all there is to it, then the pain and the suffering and the death, it all can just tear you down and put you in the grave yourself. It doesn't provide very much living here if you believe that this is all there is. So putting my perspective in that, I know Taylor's alive, she's in heaven, and I trust that God has a plan that is just bigger than I can comprehend. And choosing to believe that is what gives me the peace.
Thank you so much for sharing. And the story you shared about Job and kind of the perspective of recognizing, and this is actually for me where I can land in peace, is recognizing that when I do ultimately surrender, wanting control, coming to peace with that, I don't have any control, but I am being held by somebody who has the power and the potential of holding me. That there's something beyond me to rely on that is capable of being relied on. There's a grappling with, right? Because it's like there is that, I think in order to be able to really be in that peace, you have to zoom out of our own unique story and see the bigger picture of who God is, which is not always easy when we're watching our children suffer. I want to
Right.
acknowledge that, right?
I will tell you that, the conversations I've had with God have been so intimate, and two of them that come to mind in regards to what you just said. One of them was when Taylor was suffering one day, and I was just so mad at God. And I went to him in talking to him, even though I was mad at him, because, he's big enough to hold our feelings. And I said, God, you don't know what it's like to watch your child suffer and die. And I heard him very clearly speak back to me, "Yes, I do. I watched my son suffer and die for you." And so that was one of those moments where I just realized that God is so much bigger, and this life is so much more than just this side of eternity. That was a very intimate moment for me in a conversation with God. And then there was another when Taylor passed away. I was the only one in the room with her. And when she finally took her last breath, I had this overwhelming sense of peace. And I said, "God, hold me." And I felt his reply back to me, "I'm big enough to hold her and you at the same time. I'm holding her in heaven and I'm holding you on earth. And I'm the only one big enough to do both of those things." And it brought so much comfort to me. So I hope those two very intimate personal examples are encouraging to someone else, because I do believe that God is a very intimate, personal God, and that he wants to meet us in those kinds of places and spaces.
And most of us can't imagine being held in that capacity. I think we're so used to holding, not physically, obviously, but just providing the care and support, and the words, of the bigness of it aren't coming to me, but like holding, truly having somebody in our hands and loving them beyond belief. We have that experience for our children, but most of us have that daily experience ourselves, except for when we really come to awareness that that is the experience of God, essentially.
Right, right.
And so thank you for sharing that intimate moment with you in your daughter's passing, as those moments as you experience them. I do want to turn our focus in the conversation to that experience of knowing that your daughter was going to die before you, or expecting, I
Mhm.
should say. And so having that anticipation of it, and then of course experiencing it. And I don't necessarily even have any specific question, but I think it's important to talk about, because a huge handful of us are in the same shoes.
Right.
And many of us don't have people to look up to as the example of what that really is like. And I know for myself, one person in particular, early in my journey. So, I met 2 months after Levi, my son, was diagnosed for the first time. And her son had already died at that point. And she had gone on to start a foundation, and that's how I met her. She was coming alongside to support us in tangible ways. I only can look back now, years and years later, it's like 13 years ago, and recognize it wasn't just that she came alongside and said, "How can I help you?" It was that I saw her living, I saw her surviving,
Mhm.
and knowing that she experienced that thing that as a mom felt unbearable. So
Right.
I guess I just want to give some space for you to share your experience, and perhaps what you want other moms to have as their North Star as they're anticipating and eventually living that day.
Sure. So I would advise you not to focus on that time of thinking my kid can die at any time, or that when we get to this certain age, we're going to be at a more volatile state. And those fears can really envelop you and prevent you from making the most of today. And so that is one of the things that I really wanted to make sure that our family did as Taylor was growing up. Now, perhaps because we had other children, I didn't want them to grow up in this warped world where everything was sad all the time. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted them to be able to see joy and experience life. And so for many years, we participated in as many activities as possible as a family. And we would go to amusement parks, and we were a part of a Kid Again organization, and we worked with the MPS Society to offer family gatherings. And so we just really embraced as much life as possible. And then we also embraced as much joy as possible. My husband has a great sense of humor, and I'm so thankful for that, because there were times when we just wanted to cry. And we chose instead to laugh because he would make some sarcastic remark or something funny was said. Or, someone tripped and it just all of a sudden that trip became the funniest thing in the world because it broke the tension of what was really happening. And so I'm really thankful that we chose to hold on to joy. We chose to make life fun and enjoy it as much as possible. We have so many beautiful memories and pictures, and that is really important, not only to have after your loved one passes away, but just because it's all part of the journey. And so I would definitely encourage that in every way, holding on to joy, making sure you make those memories and making the most of every day. Even if you can't be outside, making sure that you're thankful for the sunshine that's coming through the window. And so I really believe that. But then I think giving yourself the space to grieve in today's culture is so important because our culture does not allow us that space. Everything is fast, 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 go, go, go. People have attended a funeral on Friday, and by Monday, they've already forgotten who died. We have drive-through funerals, for heaven's sake. And
Oh, really?
so,
I did not know that. That's
yeah, that became a
something.
thing during COVID. Yeah. So, anyone, after you've experienced heavy loss, give yourself as much grace as possible. I was at a point in my life where I could pare way back and pare down a lot. Gave myself about 6 months that I didn't work. My husband was not as blessed. He had to go to work just a few days after Taylor died. He was back to work. And I honestly don't know how he did it. I don't think I could have done it. And many of you listening are probably saying, yeah, I won't have that opportunity to either to take some time off of work. So what I would say then is you do what you have to do to survive, and then give yourself a lot of grace and boundaries and, just the wherewithal to say no. And I took a lot of long walks and a lot of bike rides during that season, probably for about 2 years. I did a lot of bike rides, and it was just to be able to start to feel again normally and give myself that extra space that I needed. So I would encourage the joy, the space or slash boundaries and time to heal. And then don't compare. Don't compare your grief to someone else's, yours to your spouse, how someone else responds to the grief versus your response. I mean, it's all relative. Every person is unique, every person's individual, and you just cannot, you won't be able to quantify it, qualify it, put it in a box. It just does not work that way. And so I think that's really important. And then I doubt that you'll get one day really quickly where you say, oh, I'm having a great day. This is a good day to be alive. It may take some time for that to happen. And don't be surprised if it does. Even with a strong faith, which I honestly, I just don't know how people cope without having that strong faith. But for myself, that is what got me through to the point to where I could believe that God was trustworthy and I could believe that he was putting oxygen in my lungs for a purpose. And that the hardest words I ever had to tell myself was, I did not die when my daughter died. And those were really
Mm.
hard words to preach to my own heart. So I hope somewhere in all of that, I have given some practical encouragement for anyone who's saying, I see that day coming and I don't want to think about it, but there's no way to avoid thinking about it. Maybe some of those practical hints that I just gave will help you in some way to right now determine that this holiday season needs to be the best one yet. And not because of the gifts, but because of the time we spend together, the laughter, the memories that we make, the fun that we have. Those are the reasons that we can enjoy life today. We can make the most of it today. And really simple things like having meals together, really sitting down and eating together, sitting down and watching a movie together. Very, very simple things were the things that we used in our family to grow and bond with each other.
Yeah, what I hear is that, not from this scarcity mentality of I only have however many days left, that you had to enjoy your daughter while she was here, but it was really more of a constant reminder of what's important to us.
Right.
What's important to us all the time, asking that question, or what's most important right now.
Well, and the truth is, none of us are promised tomorrow, right? None of us. So just making every day of life and love, live and love to the fullest.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to comment, of course, on the two things that you highlighted. One, it's great timing on joy and grief. It's great timing because your episode's going to release in the midst of episodes I'm doing on loneliness and grief. And so it's like, what great timing. But I think it's so important just to emphasize. I think it's easy. And I was a little afraid you're going here, to be honest, to be like joy, 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 only joy, only joy. That's what we do. But it's the joy and the grief.
Yes.
It's that the grief essentially tears open a space for the joy to exist, that they
Yeah.
work together.
Yes.
And joy is not a covering up of, let's just pretend like we're
Mm-mm.
happy. No, joy is actually an experience that you can't lie through. And
Right.
so thank you for making a point to emphasize both.
They are best lived commingled.
Mm-hmm.
They're best, we often think that they have to be separated, one in one hand and one in the other. Joy over here, grief over here, and never in the middle will they meet. But it's actually the opposite. They're best experienced when they are allowed to be held together in two hands.
Yeah, it's almost like what's coming to my mind right now is like it's almost when they feel most real, when you're feeling the depths of the pain of grief and the highs and the delight of joy. It's like you don't feel any more alive than that.
Mm.
And last question, kind of on the topic of the experience that you had in your daughter's passing, and that is, are there things that you can look back now? This is probably referring to when she was alive, that you can be like, I am so glad I did that for myself. Or that was a gift that I can thank myself for now that I didn't know I was giving myself back then. Is there anything that you can only see from this hindsight perspective that you notice?
Mm. That's a hard question because I was very intentional. Most parents are. You think about
Hmm.
yourself. You're very intentional and purposeful in your decisions as a parent with your children and with your special needs children, especially. So I guess, probably the biggest thing was just what I already mentioned, which was really focusing on each day and being thankful. There is probably one thing that I did that was so hard that I didn't want to do at all. And that was have caregivers come in our home and help us with Taylor. I really did not want that because it felt like an invasion of privacy. And yet, because we had so many years where we needed that,
Yeah.
if we hadn't done it, we wouldn't have been able to continue to make memories with our other children and make it to church every week and be involved in sports and, the things that we did. And so allowing myself to let go of some of the control in order to give Taylor space from me as her parent, in order to give our family space to live and breathe apart from suffering and special needs and all of the things that go with that. Inviting someone in and being purposeful to have caregivers assist us was a really critical choice that I made. And so I look back and I'm very thankful for, even though it was really hard and a pain, any of you right now who are listening or say, yeah, we struggle with that. It's a hard
Yeah.
thing to have people come in your home. It's a hard thing to have your privacy feel like it's invaded and to be welcoming all the time to someone else who's not a part of your family. But those caregivers, especially the ones that were there when Taylor was so very ill at the end. They were so life-giving. They were what we needed in that season. And I was so thankful that they were there. So I don't know if someone is thinking, I have to do this all by myself and I can't have any assistance and I don't want any assistance. I would say to you, I'm so glad that we made that choice that was contrary to our feelings, because it really was for the betterment of our overall well-being for the entire family.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that aspect. I know it's such a complex thing because we all need more help, and it's complex receiving
Yes.
help that has other aspects.
Right.
Okay. Well, that feels like a great place for us to wrap up. And before we do finalize this conversation, is there anything that is on your mind or your heart to share that I didn't specifically ask?
I think that special needs moms just need to be told by someone who has walked the path for a long, long time that you're a good mom.
Mm.
You're doing everything you can. No one else, no matter their journey, knows how you feel. You just shine in being the mom that you are. And there were so many times where I just needed somebody to tell me, you're doing a fantastic job. You are doing a good job. You've got this. And my mom was in heaven. So I didn't
Yeah.
have as many people speaking that word of life into me. And I'm guessing if you're listening to this podcast, that's you too. You probably don't have your friends in your community or your friends in your neighborhood. You might have some that get it, kind of, sort of, but the truth is there's no way for them to get all of it. And I just want to say that you're a good mom. You're doing everything you know to do, and God's got you. God's got you. And I just pray that something that I've said on this podcast is helpful to those mamas who are listening right now going, it's just hard. It's hard. And here to tell you that sometimes the light at the end of the tunnel is a long, long, long ways away. And so just embracing the moment or the day and making the most of it in whatever way that you can is just where you're supposed to be. And you're doing it right.
And I hope that moms really let that in, that acknowledgement of who they are as a mom, because I think you're right. I think most of us are working so hard and yet
Mm.
also feeling like we're still failing in so many
Mm.
ways.
Yeah.
And to really recognize that, yes, even though there's opportunities for improvement, does not mean that we're not amazing moms.
Yeah. And I have a friend who always used to say, bad moments don't make bad mamas. And so I would just want to encourage anyone out there who's having a bad day or lost your temper or just got frustrated or cussed somebody out about
Mhm.
insurance.
Great example.
that moment does not define you, and that you are a good mom.
I love it. I love that we ended on some laughter after so many important and connecting conversations. What are ways people can connect with you after this conversation?
Oh, thank you so much for asking me. My website is rachelwojo.com, and I can be reached with desperateprayers.com as well. We have some great resources there for all different kinds of situations that are free. And then also you'll find the book information available there as well.
Okay, great. And what I'll add is you have a podcast as well. It's called Untangling Prayer. So you can be found on the podcast platform. And I downloaded this morning when I was preparing your, freebie giveaway, give me your email address thing. And it was really great. It was beautiful and very valuable. Like, it was really, really wonderful. So thank you for creating that and sharing that. It's also available to all y'all. And so with that, thank you so much, Rachel, for being a guest here on the podcast.
My privilege. Thanks for having me.